Okay, testing. Okay, testing. Okay, testing.
I don't hear anything. I don't hear anything. I don't hear anything. I don't hear anything.
Okay, this is the mic going into YouTube Live. Testing. Okay, this is the mic going into YouTube Live. Testing. Okay, this is the mic going into YouTube Live. Testing.
Hello? 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 I don't hear anything.
This is a Scarlet mic. Testing. Testing the Scarlet. It's going to yellow.
Hello? I don't hear anything.
Let me try and bring it closer to me. This is a Scarlet mic. Testing. Testing the Scarlet.
I don't hear anything.
It's going to yellow.
Hello? I don't hear anything.
Let me try and bring it closer to me. Okay, this is the Scarlet. Testing.
This is a Scarlet mic.
Testing.
Testing the Scarlet.
I don't hear anything.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Hello? I don't hear anything.
Let me try and bring it closer to me. Okay, this is the Scarlet. Testing.
Scarlet mic.
Testing.
Testing.
Testing 1,
I
2,
don't hear
3.
anything.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
I don't hear anything.
Okay, this is the Scarlet. Testing. Testing 1, 2, 3.
I don't hear anything.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
I don't hear anything.
Okay, this is the Scarlet. Testing.
it's on. I hear it. Testing, testing. All right, sounds good. Hi, everyone. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. We're just trying to make sure that all our tech is working properly. So just, hang back a little bit, get some water. But we'll start in a few minutes. So thank you. Good. Hello, everyone. Hi. Hi, I'm Melanie Alvena. I'm the programs manager here at Asian American Women Artists Association, if you don't know me already. We're going to start our Slide Slam. Yay! I'm happy to welcome you all here. We have folks both in person as our audience and our artists, as well as online. We are very privileged to have our very first hybrid program today in 2 years, with participants tuning in from here in San Francisco as well as across the U.S. That's really exciting. Just to let you know, this event is also being recorded and live streamed to our YouTube channel. We're also joined by our wonderful ASL interpreters over here. We have Nicole and Rob. So give them a little hand. Thank you for doing ASL interpretation. We also have accessibility seating here up front in the room. If anyone needs it, just let us know or come to the front and we'll help you out. And for those of you online, automatic captions are also available on YouTube, and our ASL interpreters should be visible to you as well. Please let our staff know in the chat if you have any additional access needs and how we can make this experience better for you. I also want to take a moment to honor the fact that we are tuning in from unceded Ramaytush Ohlone land. We want to name and honor the stolen indigenous lands we reside on and recognize the agency of Native peoples who continue to steward the histories and futures of these places, including those of our own indigenous ancestors in the AAPI community, whose own culture, stories, and experiences have been erased due to imperialism, exploitation, displacement, and climate change. I'm also grateful to our staff, volunteers, and board members who are in attendance today. So AAWAA team, if you're here, please raise your hand in the room. Thank you so much for all your work. And for those AAWAA team members who are joining us online, please say hello in the chat today. We are proud and honored to continue bringing light to our stories and recognize the work of AAPI women in the arts. We also would not be able to gather here without the legacies of Black, Indigenous, people of color, and the continued fight for racial and social justice in our community. And of course, this event would not be possible without our funders. So thank you to the San Francisco Grants for the Arts, San Francisco Arts Commission, and of course the Zellerbach Family Foundation. Thank you, funders. We are also very excited to be in partnership today with KOHO, who provided this beautiful venue at Kabuki Hotel for all of our March events that we've been having. We had one earlier this month for Women's History Month, and this is our second event here. And I invited one of their artists to present today, Erin Kimura, who is present. And I'd also like to invite Susie Kagami up to tell us a little bit more about KOHO and this new artist hub by the Japantown Cultural District. Welcome, Susie.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here to see some familiar faces and some new faces. I was actually former executive director of AAWAA a few years ago, and this organization is amazing, and the leadership that it's under today has really forged a newer path based on the foundation of where our founders had started. So if you can give them all a huge round of applause. This is my third Slide Slam, and it's always an amazing event. And so I'm so happy that you all are here today. I wanted to just touch a little bit about my role in Japantown. Again, my name is Susie Kagami. I'm with the Japantown Cultural District. We are one of 8 cultural districts in San Francisco funded by the mayor's office to preserve and sustain our cultural assets and our heritage. So here we are, bringing you all here back to Japantown. And recently we just launched KOHO, KOHOSF.com, and at KOHOSF is our Instagram handle. And you can check us out there. Please join our mailing list. This is a new initiative. We are, again, just like AAWAA, telling the stories and our narratives of our ancestors, our journeys, and who we are today. This will be a gathering place, a hub, both online and a physical space once we get that up and running. And we plan to do events and share all of our shared stories, partner with organizations like AAWAA to really tell our creative history, and also be a beacon to bring Japantown communities, Japantown families back to Japantown after displacement of World War II and redevelopment. So please join our journey with us, join our email, and we hope to see you there. Thanks.
Thank you, Susie. All right, without further ado, let's get on with Slide Slam. Yes. Our first artist is Franz. Come on up, Franz.
No pressure. Say when. I'm very honored to spend time with all of you. Just call me Franz. I describe my practice as a mythologist with a mission to chronicle how Filipino immigration is redefining what it means to be American. Today, what I will be sharing with you is my approach to art making. I usually start with a Philippine myth or folklore and bring it to life, make them real and relevant by creating a mythical object and then a ritual around it. Here in Stop and Smell the Tuyo illustrates the myth of a family so poor, all they had to eat was rice. So they strung a fish in the middle of the table to smell it while they ate. So I hung up a real fish with mint dental floss above cooking rice, and it pleased my toughest critic, my cat, who ate it. I create ritual around the objects as an homage to AAWAA co-founder, my dear friend Moira Roth, whom I had the privilege of serving as TA, and she taught me the value of performance, and I always include a performative and social component as this tasting tour for school children. I use foods as metaphors of immigration and reverse colonization. I am the self-proclaimed Empress of Ube, and I'm obsessed with that purple yam. Here, my mythical objects include a neon sign where I evoke the food goddesses. You know, like the maize corn goddess, I think Ube should have its own goddess. So I accorded it celebrity status, putting its name in neon lights. Below is a visual pun. Do you know that dessert ube roll? It goes like this. Melanie over here makes the best, by the way. Shout out to her. So I've recreated the spiral with ube powder. As an accompanying ritual, I perform ube trades, like the galleon trade. I prepare a table filled with ube desserts and offer to trade them for free to anybody in exchange for food memories. I also do spatial interventions at Soma Filipinas. I fill the pavement cracks with ube jam to invoke an archaeological dig of cultural layers. Next slide. As my response to COVID, I created a giant mask out of the binacol fabric woven in the up north in the Ilocos region. This pattern is said to have magical powers and to confuse the demons. The Highland people hang these around their dead to ward off evil spirits. The other use of this magical textile is to call in the good winds, and it's made into boat sails. So the combination of warding off evil spirits and invoking good winds was needed for COVID, and as a ritual, I made some and distributed to Filipino security guards and cultural workers to keep them safe. I am continuing this healing theme in an upcoming project working on a memorial for Filipino nurses lost to COVID with Alleluia Panis of Cool Arts coming in the fall. Next. Last year, I established the first artist in residency program for Filipino American artists at my studio in Minnesota Street project in Dogpatch. It's a space where artists are free to create exploratory work that I hope questions and reinvents Filipino American identity. I named it the Arrosidency, arroz meaning rice in both Filipino and Spanish, as you can't have a proper Filipino venture without a pun. So artists enjoy curatorial visits, and we hold arroz caldo salons. My inaugural artists were Lian Ladia and England Hidalgo. Our residency is also a project space for shorter needs to fabricate and complete artwork. Recently, we had Mel Vera Cruz over to repurpose his Carlos Villa stencils that he used at the Bayanihan Center into paintings. I would like to extend the invitation to you, my fellow AAWAA artists. If you need a space to complete the work for an exhibit, we'd love to work with you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I first want to express my appreciation to AAWAA for recommending me for this project I'm going to talk about today. The Tanfran Incarceration 1942 Resilience Behind Barbed Wire is an exhibition that will be installed at the San Bruno BART station this summer. The Tanfran Temporary Detention Center was where 8,000 people were imprisoned due to their ethnicity from April 28th to October 13th, 1942. It was located where the BART station and the Tanfran shopping center currently is. As the curator, my goals were to educate about Tanforan and the Japanese American incarceration, honor those who were imprisoned, create a place of pilgrimage for families and schools, and to inspire dialogue about racial discrimination, identity, and civil liberties. The exhibition is 5 feet by 70 feet long, printed on metal. It's divided into 4 sections: injustice, resilience, legacy, and action. I worked with writer Tomiko Nomura to develop the story and the history. The images were obtained from various sources, including museums, universities, and personal collections, with the help of Hannah Chin and Melissa Bailey-Nihei. The injustice section, which is right up here, starts with the early discrimination against Japanese immigrants and their families and their eviction from the West Coast at the start of World War II. It tells about the arrival of the prisoners to Tanforan, which was created out of a quickly converted racetrack. Many of the incarcerated lived in dirty, smelly horse stables. The resilience section of the exhibition covers some of the ways that prisoners survived by creating schools, newspapers, an art program, and sports activities. The legacy section focuses on intimate stories and intergenerational experiences, including the story of a quilt being thrown over the barbed wire fence to an imprisoned pregnant woman. She tells the story to her daughter many years later when she was elderly and failing, and the tattered quilt still lay on her bed. The action section covers when Tanforan incarcerees are moved to concentration camps, later their release, and reparations. Importantly featured is how Japanese Americans are supporting those who are experiencing discrimination today, such as movements for Black Lives Matter, against anti-Asian hate, and refugee detention at the border. Art was an important way of healing and documenting the camp experience. Besides Dorothea Lange's photographs, none exist of Tanforan, as cameras were not allowed. I include artwork of incarcerees as well as descendants throughout the exhibition. You will see some of your AAWAA sisters featured in the display: Sherry Arai DeBoer, Ellen Bipp, Lucy and Kubo, as well as Felicia Hoshino and Amy Lee Tai. I believe that understanding the histories and traumas of the past can lead to equitable and humane treatments of all people. Thank you.
Wow, I'm really honored to be here. My name is Rithi Desi, and I was born in San Francisco, just a few blocks actually from here, and grew up in the Bay Area in a bicultural household, in which I frequently spent my summers in India. And I've been drawing and painting since I was very young. My work is largely abstract and with occasional hints of the real. I see my artwork as being very personal and expansive at the same time, and that it transcends borders. I use a lot of bold colors in my pieces, and I see that as an extension of my upbringing. This slide shows a few examples of postcards that came out of the COVID-19 shelter in place and the desire to communicate via handwriting instead of texts or emails, while also presenting art as ordinary and commonplace. I also wanted to support the U.S. Postal Service given the Trump administration's ongoing attempts to dismantle and destroy this government institution. And so these are just a few of my many postcards that I've mailed since 2020. This photo shows 2 of 3 art pieces that are currently on their way to Geneva as part of the Arts and Embassies program for the U.S. Ambassador to the UN. As I hover above and the water surrounds me, I apologize, the photos aren't that great, but they're the best I could come up with. I was really thrilled by this opportunity. My primary job, besides being a mom, is an elementary school teacher, so finding time and energy to work on my art is not always easy, and I struggle with balancing my various worlds and was seriously questioning my art when this opportunity arose. I kind of see my paintings as a map of my mind, When I started painting, I always have an idea of where I want to go, but inevitably I veer off in some other direction, so I'm never quite sure where I'll end up. I do have a strong idea of the colors that I want to use, and will stick with that. I will spend a ton of time focused on the nuance of color, mixing colors for that just right color. And I also spend a lot of time looking at balance and rhythm of the patterns on the paintings, as well as the interplay of light and shade. These next two slides are series that I'm currently working on. It's all in motion and meanderings. And while I like using a variety of mediums in my paintings, acrylics and watercolors are my go-to. It's All in Motion is mostly watercolor with some acrylic. This series is meant to evoke elegance and grace and the fluid nature of time. The circles represent the beauty and refinement of movement, and that we all return to the place where we began. Years ago, I had a short career as a professional ballet dancer and then taught for many years. Consequently, ballet and movement in general is often at the forefront of my mind when painting, and I'm really drawn to the balance and chaos that is at the core of movement. The next slides are my series Meanderings, and this series uses colors that evoke India, and it's really inspired by the movement, flow, and ever-changing nature of rivers, even though it's not necessarily using the colors that you typically think of for rivers. The colors, but I really wanted these paintings to examine what I see as the essence of the details and multiple layers of color that result from the energy of motion and the winding path toward the sea. And this is mine, so thank you.
Hello. Hi, my name is Julia La Chica. I'm a queer, Filipino, Japanese, American, Oakland-based visual artist and designer, originally from San Francisco. This first piece here is titled The Ping. It's a 24 by 48 inch acrylic painting. The Ping is a 12-story public housing building in the middle of Chinatown that was home for a better part of my childhood. The building's facade, you see here, is facing Broadway Street between Stockton and Powell. This painting was done in 2019, a few years after the passing of my mother. It's a personal piece that evokes both sadness and humor. I'm portrayed here as a child mourning the loss of my mother, who is departing from her physical form, and she calls out, "Ja matane," see you later. There's graffiti position on both ends of the bus, and it reads, "I miss you, Mom. Stay." Next slide. Next slide is Katsuobushi Dream. This is a 30 by 40 inch acrylic painting on canvas from 2020. The inspiration for this monochromatic painting is my memory of finding these little kokeshi dolls in a box of katsuobushi, also known as bonito flakes. I'd line up these dolls behind a bowl of hot steaming rice and watch the thinly shaved bonito flakes dance. In this painting, as with many others, I often will spray water on the wet paint or use high flow paints to create drips, giving the composition a sense of movement, weather, and corrosion. A consistent feature of my craft is the layering of paints, stories, and cultures. I consciously work to create a sense of history by integrating found objects, distressing elements, in order to reveal how corrosion, rust, and wear accumulate on bodies and surfaces over time. Assemblage art was the first medium I began to explore as an intimate place of spiritual offerings. Stars and Stripes is a 9 by 13 inch mixed media piece paying tribute to immigrants and refugees who are here to seek protection from violence, war, poverty, and environmental catastrophes. I support frontline immigrant and refugee communities that are being targeted by racist, inhumane immigration policies. The double standards are evident, and we need to keep up the fight for justice, inclusion, and equity. In this piece, the interior is painted and collaged with images of immigrants, dreamers, and Americans who are targeted by hate because of the way they look. Here, I reclaim the flag as a symbol of freedom for us all. This next piece, this final piece, is called Tatawan. It's a 24 by 36 inch acrylic on canvas, and I completed this this year. My father came to San Francisco in the 20s from the Visayan region of the Philippines. He settled in San Francisco's Little Manila around Kearny Street. He later married my mom, and eventually they divorced, and I saw less of him. This painting is of a place reimagined, the circles representing community, love, and acceptance. My father in the foreground, returning home, likely with a gift. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lori Kay. The first slide is broken wishbone. It represents hopes and wishes juxtaposed with disappointments and unrequited dreams. A family favorite tradition was passed down from my mother of breaking a wishbone from a turkey or a chicken after dinner, and whoever got the larger piece, according to the myth, their wish came true. So the space between the two pieces represents a chasm of my biracial background. I sculpted this on a human scale for large wishes, for big dreams, and a gateway for people to walk through. It was exhibited at San Francisco State at the Student Union after winning a sculpture competition for 10 years. And for me, this was a major feat as I cast and welded the sculpture myself. The next slide. Heir to Rice is the title of this piece. My family are rice farmers in the northern Philippines, and I wanted to imply a presence to honor my heritage, the sacredness of rice, agricultural work in my family. After the death of my grandparents, I tried to imagine either of them wearing this hat. I tried to tell a story of memories, of language, of tradition, of generational layers and the complexity of cultures with my worn-out multimedia hat that was cast in bronze, forged with brass, weaved and welded. The precocious balance that this hat sits on is my struggle, living in a high-tech, fast-paced Silicon Valley to not leave my roots behind. The next slide is a series from the Ifugao tribe in northern Philippines. I found the art, the weavings, the crafts as a child from the Ifugao region incredibly compelling. I started working with this symbol in the late 1990s. I just felt it resonated with me. It's a simple symbol, but it's very complex. It represents feminine, woman, womb, fertility. And also, I find when I'm working on it, I meditate on the seasons of woman, girlhood, puberty, womanhood, pregnancy, birth, menopause, home. In creating this series of two-dimensional work, I call my Ifugao symbol series. This is the only one that I added hair to, so this is entitled Pubic Patch. Working with the symbol, I take control, not a government, not religion, or male-dominated societies. I find this symbol has engaged me for decades. There's so many variations, colors, shapes, and compositions. The last piece is the running chair. My intent was to create a whimsical piece and comment about the time and space and location that even now chairs have to run to catch up. I welded it out of recycled brass pipes that were a railing on a skyscraper here in San Francisco. I completed it in 2000 and was the first place I exhibited was at Somar with the AAWAA exhibition. I also felt that I had to work large as a woman in sculpture that wanted to do public art and work in the public realm, that to be taken serious, I felt that if I didn't have anything large, I wouldn't be competitive. So now I'm working on building a sculpture garden. I have been at Hunters Point Shipyard for the last 22 years, where I do my two-dimensional work, and then I also work at home on sculpture and the sculpture garden. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Paulina Hong, and I will be presenting pieces for my upcoming exhibition, Fluttering Fortunes. And that starts off with the title of what this piece is named after. So my parents own a Chinese restaurant, and it's funny because I've handed out thousands of fortune cookies in my life, but I actually hate fortune cookies. And the reason being is because I think they present this idea of Chineseness that doesn't feel real to me, where it's like, they're superstitious, they're like happy-go-lucky foreigners. And in this piece, I want to re-examine what it means to have your own fortunes represented. So here we have a fortune cookie, spilling out handmade fortunes by me. I wrote them on rice paper due to the delicacy of the fortunes. And the fortunes say my deepest wishes and desires. So for instance, one of them is, you will end intergenerational trauma. I also integrated Chinese luck symbols throughout the piece. So the piece starts with double happiness at the front and double happiness at the end. My next piece is also about fortune cookies. It's called Broken Fortunes. And there's this superstition that white customers at our restaurant would tell me that if your fortune breaks, your fortune won't come true. It's not a superstition that any Chinese people believe in, because we don't eat fortune cookies. So anyway, I wanted to depict the American dream through broken fortune cookies and what it means to live under a society where people tell you what you're supposed to live in. So we have broken fortunes. I used gold paints to represent wealth and prosperity. But then I also had my sister import fortunes from her family's restaurant, and I tore them up and I glued them throughout the piece, connecting them. Next slide, please. My next piece is called Resilience, and it shows globe amaranth flowers from a soy sauce bucket. So my dad uses like one soy sauce bucket a week at a restaurant, and we use it for everything. We use it for trash can, we use it for rainwater collection, we use it for stool. And my mom also used them as planters. So we had 10 of these planters in front of our restaurant. And she had grown these flowers because she had some health problems, and in Chinese medicine, these flowers are supposed to help you with those health problems. So I wanted to explore what it means for Asian Americans to reuse and rethink about the resources around them and turn something really beautiful from that with this piece. Next slide, please. And this is my final piece. It is one part of my 12-part series called Zodiac Plants. So I used to really be into the zodiac placemats at Chinese restaurants that you might have seen, and I would like trace my finger across the mat and think about the different like stories that could happen. So with this series, I wanted to pair the plant's personality with a zodiac animal's personality. So here we have the snake and the rattlesnake plant. It's not just a pun, even though Chinese people do love puns. Both of them, to me, are like intuitive, alluring, and also very hard to take care of. And you can see the rest of these plants at my upcoming exhibition and all the other pieces at Understory Oakland It will debut on April 1st, and it will be on display throughout the month of April. Thank you so much.
Hello. So it's serendipitous that Judy's here because this is her visual artwork. And it's the cover of my upcoming book, my second book, The Quenching. It's a book of poetry, and the title poem is also a collaboration between myself and Judy. I'm going to read two poems, excerpts from two poems in this book, and the internment is a huge part of this, the historical background behind the first poem, The Quenching. The thirsty woman and the hungry woman are two characters that are based on myself and Judy. The thirsty woman is based on Judy's family, and the hungry woman is based on my family. The Quenching. A thirsty woman sits by the dry creek bed. She softens like the sessile flesh of an oyster. She hardens like the shell's osseous resistance. She thinks like a growing pearl, like moonlight, like the reflection of the moon on a dry creek bed. There was a time before her father was born. Pearl meant a concretion of nacre found in oysters, and Waimomi, pearl waters, was a lagoon off the coast of Oahu. Hawaiians fished there. Though oysters were plenty, they placed no value on pearls. When her father was born, pearl still meant a concretion of nacre found in oysters. Pearl Harbor had been dredged to shelter warships. December 7, 1941. Pearl still meant a concretion of nacre found in oysters. Dama, a dama, dama, a dama, dama, a dama. Harbor still meant an inlet deep enough to shelter a boat. Dama, a dama, dama, a dama, dama, a dama. Pearl Harbor, Pearl Harbor, Pearl Harbor, Pearl Harbor. The family had to leave their houseboat in the Sound. As they looked out from the back of the army truck, they saw their dog chasing after them, panting, 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 growing smaller, 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 smaller. Tule is a large hardstem bulrush. Common tule, hardstem tule, tule brush, hardstem bulrush, viscid bulrush. Tule Lake was a camp for no-no boys. Dama, a dama, dama, a dama, dama, a dama. If there was one in the family, the whole family went to stay together. Dama, a dama, dama, a dama, dama, a dama. A pearl is an oyster's way of protecting itself from foreign substances. The younger brother of a no-no boy might ask two questions. Could an oyster sometimes mistake part of its own body for a foreign substance? Is there anyone who is not too ashamed to answer this question? A thirsty woman sits by the dry creek bed. A hungry woman comes and sits by her. She asks the earth to send the hunger her father felt as a boy, the hunger of a gambler when dinner was nothing but rice and soy sauce. His hunger to rise above the streets, above his grandfather's teen gao gambling cards. Teen de yan wo mui. Heaven, earth, human, harmony, plum flower. Above his mother counting the beads of her rosary. Hail Mary, full of grace. Hail Mary, full of grace. Hail Mary, full of grace. At the one end of one hill began another, hills like knowledge. His hunger brought him to this country where he studied and studied, where his wife gave birth to a hungry baby who would eat nothing but stories and flowers. Her first word was fa, flower. She asks her mother, "Where are your lost sisters?" Numbers 3, 4, 10, and 11. She says, "I'll count in the language I speak to you. Some say sup, sup yet. Some say sup, sup yet. 3, 4, 10, and 11. She asks her mother, "Where are your lost sisters? What were their favorite flowers?" Thank you.
Hi y'all, how you doing today? Oh, before I break things. So my name is Erin Kimura. I am a collage artist out here in San Francisco. So since I was very young, I have a very cacophonous mind. I do struggle with anxiety, depression, all those fun things. And as a child, I always felt this deeper melancholy, these deeper senses that I couldn't name, but that I could only feel. And through time, I felt that, and through the pandemic especially, I felt these reverberations in my body more and more and more. I've always tried to find myself trying to articulate this deeper knowing. And so what I do is mostly through collage is articulating my ancestors that I feel deeply that resonate in my own bones. I found collage as a great medium just because I feel like in all the magazines I've ever saw and all the images, they don't just represent me or my knowing. So for example, this collage here is kind of a showcase of my ancestors in 1964. I think of my grandma who never told me where she was from, what her life was like in Hawaii, growing up poor and then coming to San Francisco with her abusive husband. What was that like? So in so many ways, I feel those larger reverberations and I try to articulate that through collage. Oftentimes, I am trying to alchemize and imagine these lived pasts, which are also in some odd way also feel like my futures. So in so many ways, these are also like remixes of myself, remixes of my ancestors. And for the next one, the next slide that's also gonna come on, that is a meditation during the pandemic particularly. This is me during the 1950s in Japantown, right before redevelopment. Just speaking to my family members in Japanese, driving my 1965 Chevy out here. So yeah. And then finally, aside from doing 2D, another thing that I've been exploring is also producing. So particularly film producing. So as you know, Benkyodo is a 115-year-old Japanese confectionery that is closing here on the corner. And so relationships are gonna save us at the end of the day. And because I am so close with my Uncle Rick and Uncle Bob, who are the owners of Benkyodo, I thought, okay, this is the time to really showcase and honor their legacy. So right now I'm working with Akira Bosch and Tad Nakamura of Little Tokyo, and we're capturing Benkyodo's last 6 months of its entire history. And this is the first time in their history that they're allowing someone to take such an intimate view of their life. And again, so I would be caught dead in my tracks if we had a homeboy from CNN come in and document them. So it felt really timely and important to document people that have really forged my understanding of community and also J-Town, the J-Town community itself. So thank you so much. So hopefully this will come end of next year. It's gonna take some time, but We just finished our last shooting, one of our last shootings today. They close on Thursday. Do not wait in line. I don't recommend it. Thank you again.
Hi, everybody. It's an honor for me to present here, and I thank all of you who made it possible. And I also apologize because I'll probably be reading just in order to cram everything in. I have to stay on task. Can you hear me okay? Okay. My first piece is called Coming Up for Air. It's a quintessential pandemic piece, completed during this critical time, but also because I feel the imagery is fitting to the pandemic. The sea turtle is surging up towards the water's surface, expressing for me the relief and even the hope of exhilaration that all of us have yearned for around the pandemic. Most of the, well, wait a minute. I wanted to say that most of my pieces, all the pieces that I'm showing here are pandemic created. They were just in that time and space. How the piece came about is that I used to be an avid gardener in my old home in Boston, and the turtle body is, oh, sorry, could you go back to that, or is that not possible? The turtle body is a hosta leaf, a plant origin, collected, pressed, and forgotten in my files. And the challenge for me was to apply these lovely but fragile materials to the ideas that interest me. Okay, next, please, and thank you. This is called What She Brings. My art usually deals with political themes, and this came about when the Chinese government brutally suppressed the pro-democracy movement in Beijing in 1989. That event became more urgent to me than painting any landscape, which was what I was doing before. I would thenceforth direct my art to the fight for social justice. Greater involvement with my Chinese identity came in those years as well, and led me to take on our family history and personal relationships. I'm sorry, I'm of immigrant background marked by racial minority status in the 1950s, and in my family we all had identity issues. So I was lucky enough to have art to help me figure out some of those issues. Okay, sorry, I'm getting behind. This piece is called Skylight. I use geometry as a basis for it because it allows for the creation of the illusion of depth with the oscillation between 2D shape and 3D structure. And I'd like to talk a little bit about how I make my images. I start with patterned tissue, and it has a characteristic tan color and printed markings and lines on it and words. Because the tissue paper is so fragile, I build up the support in layers using acrylic medium. The process allows a degree of translucency when the finished work is hung back and can be backlit and seen then against the light like a stained glass window. So this allows the work to be seen either with frontal light or lit from behind. And I like that idea because to me it could suggest the passage of time for an image. If you visit my website, you will see, this isn't a great example of that technique, but you will see other examples where I do employ that technique. And this is my last image, Owl in Flight. And I've gone back to celebrating nature. And again, there's the hosta leaf. This time it's used like a cape between the owl's wings. Most works of mine go very slowly, and this one went quickly and was simple and easy to carry out. And it's collage, and I love collage because of the capacity to create enormous changes in mood, even at the very last moment. Okay, none of my pieces here was particularly political, but again, I would invite you to visit my website if you want to see a fuller range of my exploration of media and ideas. In closing, I'd like to leave everybody with some words of wisdom from Madeleine Albright, who passed away this past week. She was Secretary of State under Bill Clinton. Here it is. The act of striving in itself is the only way of keeping faith with life. Again, thanks for this opportunity.
Hello, I am not Cynthia. I am Jenny, the membership coordinator, and I will be speaking on behalf of Cynthia. So, the first piece, Flying Lessons from 2019. This was taken by Chris Matos, a great friend of AAWAA's and a great friend of all. This was for A Place of Her Own, for the Hungry Ghosts, Exploring Chronic Heartache to Resilience at the Marin Museum of Contemporary Art. This painting is #1 in a series of 5 paintings as yet to be painted. It's the beginning of female energies coming together in solidarity in the spirit of collaboration and community, keeping out all oppressors' teachings of competition. Each successive painting will include more of the dress forms rising. They will continue to rise as they find their voices, understanding they no longer need to overwork or overplease or are fearful. They belong because they are. They are the powerful, wise leaders in community with each other. The sketch and proposal for the idea was part of the permanent collection of What is Feminist Art at the Smithsonian. This painting is, the left side is Freedom to Concentrate. That was from 2003 that she painted. The right side is from 2019 from a designer called AAPI. The exhibition for AAPI is part of the Fancy Couture exhibition at the Legion in San Francisco. Because of Cynthia's work of surreal fashion imagery and use of cultural heritage themes, the public program invited Cynthia to provide an August Zoom painting demo. She will also include discussion about the ancestral healing workshops inside A Place of Her Own, which is a AAWAA program as well. Next slide, please. This is called Maps of Consciousness, #11. This is recent from this year. This is about Cynthia spending the last 14 months with a concussive brain. She had been unable to read, write, or participate in social media or create art without getting nauseous and sick. She has been advised to do as little as possible for a couple of months. Normally working with very detailed surreal paintings, this abstract painting represents a big departure and a freeing of style. She is able to focus and relies on her intuition. Last year when this started, she was afraid of becoming invisible, but she's enforcing this stillness, working on healing and has had many epiphanies. Oddly, she has gotten attention on a national and international level and sold this abstract for more than she's ever sold anything. It's been incredibly painful and wondrous. So fingers crossed, she's saying no or doing less without worries of becoming insignificant, and her shared wisdom is to listen to your body when it's giving you little hints or it'll knock you on your butt. And then last slide. This is she cover for the Mago International Goddesses Press from 2022. It is a mixed media painting and collage. This was an international publication focusing on ancestors and always looking for visual literary submissions. Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Barnali. Thank you, AAWAA, for inviting me to speak today. So in the second year of the pandemic, I found myself dressing up like the flowers that I found on the walks in my Berkeley neighborhood. Is the slide up? I did this embodiment of our state flower, the California poppy, on the day that I received the first dose of my vaccine as a kind of a celebration and in gratitude for living here where I could gain access to this new medicine. I posted this to the California Native Plant Society Facebook group and I got a huge response. If you know the history of native plant culture, you would appreciate why this might feel significant. The floral edition of Unfaithful Recreations, this series now has 24 self-portraits where I mimic California native flowers using fabrics and dance forms from India. They weave together my experiences as a woman, as an immigrant, as a landscape architect, my love of saris, and my education in Odissi dance. It has given me a new way to connect with place. But connection with place is often fraught when you're an immigrant. For me, I have to work on it almost every day. For almost, next slide, for almost a decade now, my partner Anirvan and I have been curating and running the Berkeley South Asian Radical History Walking Tour, a place-based storytelling experience drawing on a century-long history of South Asian organizing and resistance in the city of Berkeley. For 200 tours, we've used artistic interventions like theater and historic recreations to bring the streets of Berkeley alive with stories of feminists and freedom fighters, of youth organizers and LGBTQ community builders. One of the most significant outcomes of our decade of work happened in 2019 when we organized to get the city of Berkeley to rename a downtown street, Kala Bagay Way, in honor of one of the earliest South Asian women to come to the US. When Kala, her husband, and their 3 children tried to move to Berkeley over a century ago, they were shut out by their white neighbors. Our nomination got the support from the indigenous community, housing activists, Asian American activists, and others. Over a century later, we were finally able to give Kala Bagay the welcome she deserved. So, next slide. Much of my work today has to do with the body and the brown immigrant body in particular. In the first year of the pandemic, in response to the Getty Museum Challenge, I recreated over 50 pieces of artwork with a focus on Asian and women artists, placing my body at the center of many of these pieces. One of the most influential artists I came across was Pan Yu Liang, the legendary artist of Chinese origin who moved to Paris in 1942. Of the 4,000 paintings she left behind, more than half are nudes of non-white women and included many self-portraits. She challenged the idealization of beauty as white women's beauty and deemed bodies like hers as worthy of being painted. As someone who grew up facing street harassment and being body shamed and wanting to hide my body, it has been a journey to place myself at the center of my art. To dare not only to be seen, but to think of myself as beautiful. Next slide. The flower recreation project is ongoing. It has been a joy to collaborate with rare plant photographer Amy Patton. The Globe Lily photo that you see is one of hers. To rediscover local treasures like the Regional Botanic Garden, where I found the bleeding heart. To free my saris from their suitcases and honor their histories. And to create new narratives of self and place with Odissi dance. These final pieces are meant to delight, but just below the surface are layers that I hope open up conversations about how British colonialism disrupted indigenous landscapes, Odissi dance, and sari weaving. I'm hoping that these images will provoke curiosity about indigenous plants and the role of humans in nature. This project has allowed me to deepen my knowledge of indigenous flowers in my adopted home and helped ground me in place. Today, when I see these flowers, I know that I'm home. You can find all of these images on Instagram at Berkeley Wiley, and they're up at Guerrilla Cafe in Berkeley through the month of April. And thank you again for inviting me to speak.
Okay. So many powerful artists and so much powerful work in this room. But I also want to acknowledge, before we switch to all of our online presenters, I want to acknowledge our special guests that are present here. Barnali, who just spoke, we wanted her to be a guest, but obviously you can see why we allowed her to show her work too. So thank you, Barnali, for being here. Yeah, thank you. We also wanted to acknowledge Indra Mangal, who's here from the Asian Art Museum. Yeah, she's over there. She's the director of the educational programs there at the Asian. We've partnered with her many times. I hope you get a chance to meet her and just say hello. Yeah, so then now we're going to, oh, sorry, one more thing. We also have our graduates of our Emerging Curators program that just celebrated 10 years of training emerging curators through AAWAA. Here in person, we have graduates, Diana Lee, who is here. Is Kelsey here? Kelsey Myers? I don't know if she's here, but she was supposed to be here. Kelsey. We also have Lisa Chu, who will be presenting online later, but she's also a graduate of that program as well. And then joining us online, I hope we can get them up here. Joining us online, we have Corey Madden. to have her see more of our artists. So thank you, Corey, for being welcoming and being present here today, even if online. So that's her. She's waving hello. Did we get Sharon? Maybe. Well, as we try to get Sharon up, Sharon is, as far as I've never met Sharon in person, but apparently she helped catalog a lot of AAWAA artists in the early years of AAWAA. So we wanted to bring her back as a guest, as someone who was involved in the early days, decades ago, who was vital to sort of documenting our artists, and that's something that's still very important today. As you've seen, some of you with our artist membership on our directory, on our website, as well as our new Pass It On program that's documenting oral histories of our artists, as well as our archives program that's ongoing right now. We're just ensuring, because as some of you have brought of that fear of being invisible, we don't want that. We want to make sure that your work is honored, that your work is documented, and that in future history, when we talk about American history, when we talk about American art, that we are part of that narrative. So yeah, I'm not sure if we can get Sharon. So if not, I think we can move on, and we'll just bring up Christy Lynn. Oh, Corey wants to say something. Okay, Corey can say something. If not, I think we can move on, and we'll just bring up Christy Lynn. Okay. Oh, Corey wants to say something. Okay, Corey can say something. Oh, Corey wants to say something. Okay, Corey can say something.
Hey, you guys! I have a pretty big last joke here on camera, so saying hello again. This is Corey Madden from the board. I'm glad to be here. And thanks so much to AAWAA for organizing it. I have a pretty big last joke here on camera, so saying hello again. This is Corey Madden from the board. I'm glad to be here. And thanks so much to AAWAA for organizing it.
Oh, hi. I'm Sharon. I'd just like to say hello to everyone. I was a member of AAWAA way back in the day, in the 90s, I think. It's nice to see the organization still going strong. So thank you for inviting me today. Hello to everyone. I was a member of AAWAA way back in the day, in the 90s, I think. It's nice to see the organization still going strong. So thank you for inviting me today.
Okay, hello, can you hear me? Well, hopefully this works. Okay, seems like YouTube is delayed, but gonna go for it. Hello everyone, my name is Christy Lynn, and I'm an artist and landscape architect in San Diego, California. The project I'm sharing about today is located in Mira Mesa, a suburb of San Diego located about 20 minutes from the main downtown. Okay. My team has been, oh gosh, it's like echoing. Well, hopefully this works. Let's see. Okay, let me, seems like YouTube is delayed. Okay, I muted YouTube. I think that'll help. Sorry. My team has been commissioned by the City of San Diego to create a permanent public art piece in Mira Mesa Community Park. Functionally, it'll double as a replacement to the existing gazebo shade structure. As you can see here, the sun is a huge part of this public art project. From morning until nighttime, the sun will move across this shade structure, casting different shadows throughout the day. If you look closely, you'll see that the steel shade structure will be cut out with a collage of shapes representing Mira Mesa. As the sun shines overhead, the shapes will be projected onto the pavement as an ever-changing collage of shadows. So what shapes should be cut out on the structure that represent Mira Mesa? And how do we tell this community's story? Current demographics list Mira Mesa as being 55% Asian, 29% white, 15% Hispanic, and 4% African American. The large Asian population lends itself to being home to many Asian grocery stores, great ethnic food, and the Tet and Holi festivals. So how do you create an art piece representative of this diverse community, knowing that the piece will be permanent? So we invited teens to help and organized the Mira Mesa Community Art Teen Fellowship, a joint effort between two arts organizations called AAWAA Project and Parkeology. The local teens spent 1 week documenting their community and creating the collage for the sculpture. The City of San Diego requires artists to use a portion of their public art commission funds for public participation. So we paid our teens, and we paid experts in the community to present on topics such as history and wildlife. We even got the Mira Mesa Astronomy Club to set up their telescopes so that we could all stargaze in the park. Here you can see us making cyanotype prints using leaves in the park. Cyanotype is a printing process in which the sun develops the image. Knowing that the final sculpture depended on the sun, we studied the shadows that different objects would make. We just got final approval from the City of San Diego's Public Art Committee, so it'll be completed sometime next year. My last slide is a close-up rendering of the structure. Here is some of the images. Here's a list of some of the images going on the structure. Cosmology from Kumeyaay indigenous peoples who first inhabited and protected this land. The fairy shrimp, an endangered animal whose habitats delayed construction on the local elementary school. Lion dancers performing at the Tet Festival, and lots of ethnic food. Altogether, the shadows are inseparable from one another and changing together with the sun. Likewise, Mira Mesa is diverse, united, and ever-evolving. I just wanted to thank AAWAA for putting on this event. It's a pleasure to be part of this organization. Thank you. Likewise, Mira Mesa is diverse, united, and ever-evolving. I just wanted to thank AAWAA for putting on this event. It's a pleasure to be part of this organization. Thank you. Altogether, the shadows are inseparable from one another and changing together with the sun. Likewise, Mira Mesa is diverse, united, and ever-evolving. I just want to thank AAWAA for putting on this event. It's a pleasure to be part of this organization. Thank you.
10 years ago, as part of AAWA's Emerging Curators program, I produced Hungry Ghost, Yearning for Fulfillment. I responded to the ECP call for proposals because of my interest in myth, metaphor, and the craft of storytelling. I also wanted to cultivate creative opportunities that foster cultural awareness. Hungry Ghost was an exhibition highlighting the work of 38 visual and literary artists. The exhibit featured essays, illustrations, mixed media installations, paintings, photography, poetry, and sculpture. In the call for submissions, I asked artists to interpret and illuminate a powerful, culturally rich metaphor. I asked, how do Asian American women artists express deep emotional and physical desires? How do we relate to the idea of isolation and alienation? How do we reconcile our Asian backgrounds and American surroundings? How do food and family shape our identity? How do we deal with consumption and compulsion? We do crave acceptance and fulfillment. What feeds us? Since then, I've been seeking answers to these questions myself, working on a memoir also titled Hungry Ghost. I'll read an excerpt of it. Before I spoke English instead of Taiwanese, before I went to school and learned what was acceptable to eat and what was not, I ate everything my parents ate. The three of us would sit at our chrome-edged Formica dining table in our Toronto apartment and feast on sliced beef shank, marinated pig's ear, tripe, liver, tongue. I had no qualms about eating offal. I particularly savored the soy sauce and brown sugar braised chicken feet my mom would buy from Chinatown. Pretending I was a witch eating children's fingers, I'd suck the salty, sweet flavor off the skin and crunch the twig-like bones with my teeth. One time someone scolded my mom for letting me eat them, citing a Taiwanese saying that children who ate chicken feet would be bad students at school, tearing their books apart. Food has never just been fuel for me, it's feelings, infused with my cultural heritage and influenced by societal expectations. We moved to the US the summer before I started second grade, and I soon learned that it was not cool to like certain foods I enjoyed. In school, a teacher asked about our favorite and least favorite foods. Liver was unanimously despised. I was quiet and still as everyone around me raucously railed against that organ meat. I started to eat more of what my American friends ate. And then I started obsessing over some of those foods. I was shameless about my gluttony, even as my dad chided me with Taiwanese food insults. Don't be a bungtang, a rice bucket, an empty, mindless vessel that has no purpose but to fill up with rice. Don't be a yao gui, a hungry ghost that greedily craves and is never satisfied. But I was a hungry ghost, devouring American junk food and pop culture. I marveled at all the sugary cereals and salty snacks I saw on TV commercials, lured by their catchy jingles and catchphrases. I am cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. I longed for Doritos and Cheetos, Ho-Hos and Twinkies, Frosted Flakes and sugar smacks. If you are what you eat, what you consume, what you crave, then I was Garfield, the lasagna-loving cat. I was Cookie Monster. I was Count Chocula and Frankenberry. I was a hungry, hungry hippo, snapping my jaws open to devour everything within my reach. It was much later, in adulthood, that I learned that the hungry ghost archetype is not specific to gluttonous children. A concept based in Buddhist and Taoist beliefs, the hungry ghost is a lost, insatiable spirit who roams burdened by unmet needs. Yes, that was me also, grotesque in my neediness, starving for acceptance and yearning to belong. Thank you.
Hello, this is Kay Kong. Thank you for coming. The journey is a series of significant steps I took. Can you see me? Hello? Hello? Oh, I'm sorry, I'll start again. Journey is a series of significant steps I took since I came to United States to study. A journey with a myriad of hope, joy, sorrow, disappointment, and expectation. I use basan, which is Korean socks, to create paintings which describe a transformation and evolution of Korean woman. Korean women used to wear these white cotton socks to keep warm and to cover their toe because barefoot wasn't considered polite in front of others and in front of men. On the floor is plaster cast of my barefoot and my foot with basan. These works describe an evolution and transformation of Korean woman from protected to a barefooted, independent woman in the West. Conversation with my father is composed of actual excerpt from 134 letters I received from my father since I came to U.S. This conversation stopped with his death. Since I wasn't informed about his death, I wasn't really sad, but I was invited to create the Day of the Dead 20 years after his death. And I had to read all his letter, 134, and then wrote excerpt on one sheet of rice paper. And I repeated with diluted ink on same sheet. On the left, I wrote, "Dear Father" and "Dear Daughter," and I repeated it until it turns white. So this piece is tribute to my father and close of my own mourning. The dark and very faint writing in the back looks like my father's voice was echoing. And next one is "It's a Girl." "It's a Girl" is from old Korean custom of announcing birth of a child. If it's a girl, they would put charcoal on hemp rope and hang it on the outside of front door. But if it's a boy, they would add red dried chili pepper and then charcoal rotating and then hung on outside front door. Celebration. And most usually grandparents would name their newborn granddaughter with typical male name, which means the woman should have boys next time. This is a celebration of girl which was neglected in Korean culture for too long. Last one, "In Search of a Absolute Letter" is from my lack of ability to speak English properly. These 4 characters disappeared from 28 Korean alphabet. My art is about story of my life in America because I was confronted with the issue of race, geography, and language. And language is the most one things that I cannot change easily. I'm still having trouble with the pronunciation of English correctly because in Korean character we don't have accent or intonation. So these works are all about story of my life, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Hello.
Hi everyone, how's it going? I'm just gonna wait till we're all set up, transitioning back into the physical world. I feel like I just time traveled. Let me know when it's good, Max. That was us just a moment ago. Okay. We good? Okay. Oh, that's me. So, Jenny, I think you just need to mute your YouTube and switch back to the regular slides. It feels like directing an orchestra. It's amazing. And it's amazing to do it with you all, too, as players in that orchestra. So, thank you. All right. Hey, everyone. Another round of applause for all our Slide Slam artists. Thank you all so much for joining us for AAWAA's, the Asian American Women Artists Association's annual Slide Slam. This is the third time we've done this, I believe. Either way, if y'all might have heard, I'll take off my mask too. This was when the pandemic started, this was the first program that we had to do virtually. And now it's come full circle, and this is the first program we're trying to do hybrid. And so, I'm Diana, by the way. I'm Managing Director of AAWAA. Sorry, I feel like I'm going through a portal right now, through a wormhole. So, yeah, I'm Diana, I'm Managing Director of AAWAA. Thank you all for coming, and thank you to all of our artists and for supporting them. Like I said, when we started, this was, we started this program back in 2018, and then we kind of skipped a year, but when we were planning to bring it back in 2020, the pandemic hit, and this was our first virtual program. And now it's come full circle, and it's our first hybrid in-person and online program. So, like I said, this was kind of like directing an orchestra, and it takes many people involved. You can see 4 of us here crouched on our laptops. You might not see that online, but that's what we're doing in person. But all of you are an amazing part of this, and including our ASL interpreters, Nicole and Rob. Thank you for helping make our events accessible. And also to our KOHO staff, CZ and Melissa, who are here today. And Hotel Kabuki, Angelica, who helped us book this room. And a huge thank you to Max, who came and supported us last minute with the live stream, so all of you online could see what we're doing, and everyone in person, we can experience it all together in different places of the world and the map. So. And a huge thank you also to our staff and volunteers, Melanie, Jenny, who presented, Jenny who presented for Cynthia, and Ivy, who's been helping us with the live stream as well. And Diana Chen, who's been online pasting all of your links to the audience online. And Kimmy, who checked you in as well for those in person. Yeah, so a huge round of applause to everyone. And yeah, so that's our Slide Slam. We're gonna open it up for mingling right after this, but we're gonna, I just have a few announcements. So this Slide Slam is part of a larger, program that we have for membership. So every last Saturday of the month, AAWAA likes to we host monthly studio hours from 4 to 6 p.m. and they are virtual. And this next one in April, we're actually going to try to make it hybrid as well. It'll be a less complicated setup because it's more of a casual, get together, let's talk about art. And the reason it's partly going to be in person is because one of our newer members, Melissa Wong, is curating a show at the Soma Arts Cultural Center in San Francisco called Grow Our Souls, inspired by Grace Lee Boggs. And a few members, AAWAA members, are in that show, including myself, including Rhea Lynn de Guzman, Cindy Shi, and Melissa, who is also a member. So there's that. And that show is also part of our, so Melanie and I also work for the Asian Pacific Islander Cultural Center. And every year we put on the United States of Asian America Festival. And it's also our 25th anniversary doing that festival. So that visual arts exhibition, Grow Our Souls, is going to be a part of that festival as well. Included in that festival is also another program of AAWAA's called Hella Tender, and that's part of our Emerging Curators program. And there's going to be that's being hosted in various locations in San Francisco, Chinatown. Yeah, you can go to the next slide, Max and Jenny. So this is Mr. Yi. He's a calligrapher, and he also frames and mounts calligraphy. And so he's going to be one of the artists featured in that show. Aaron Kimura is also another artist. I think you're in this room. Yeah, and a number of amazing artists are also going to be running an activity on May 14th, and there's going to be multiple activities in various locations of San Francisco, Chinatown. So yeah, those are all my announcements, but for those in person, we welcome you to stay and mingle, and we'll open up the Zoom so you can mingle with people on our computers too. And for those joining online, for artists who are on Zoom, please stay on Zoom so that you can network amongst yourselves online and with people in person too. I feel like I'm existing in multiple realms at once, and I feel powerful doing it, but it's also like my brain is so scattered right now. Yeah, thank you all so much for coming, and please support Japantown businesses, Ben Kyoto. Thank you for coming. We did it!